Welcome to the Bizfluent Podcast, where we dive into the real world challenges and successes of business owners, entrepreneurs, and industry titans. We keep it candid, we keep it practical, but most importantly, we keep it Bizfluent.
Thank you for that intro. But before we jump in, a quick disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organizations, sponsors, or partners. Nothing in this podcast should be considered financial, legal, or investment advice. Always consult with a professional before making big decisions.
And of course, we like to keep it real, and that means honest conversation, unfiltered insights, and maybe a little bit of strong coffee with whiskey in it.
Oh, I like that. And if that sounds good to you, then stick around because today's episode is packed with valuable takeaways.
Welcome to your Bizfluent Podcast. Oh, hey, we're on.
Oh, man.
As you can see, nothing's changed. We're still picking our noses. But if you're watching this, you've seen the brand new intro. So, like we said, it
And the
really
new screen.
is.
And the new screen.
New screens,
background.
all the good stuff. So, as we've talked about over the past couple of episodes, we lost Miss Emmons, and man, she is definitely was a big contributor to our show. But we finally got the task done. So, what you just watched is our brand new intro. We hope you like it. We tried to have fun with it. We tried to make it real. We tried to make it real stupid, and that's okay. So
Which is the main reason you don't take any of the things we say on here too seriously. That's the disclaimer. That's the real disclaimer.
I mean, look, dude, I'm just a dude trying to play a dude that's trying to play a dude that does podcasts with another dude. So
it's true.
And
I'm not even a real dude. I'm actually part of the Matrix. So there you go. Is this even real?
There's more to this than that. Transformers more than meets the eye.
Oh man, the new kids don't even know that. G.I. Joe.
Not back in the day, dude. No,
G.I. Joe.
Knowing is half the battle.
That's right. Knowing is half the battle. See, kids don't get that stuff anymore. That's why they're screwed up.
Somebody was no, dude. So it was even more awesome. Somebody was my buddy was telling me about a like a meme he watched or a video he watched or something like that, and somebody was like, name one Dracula anywhere, and somebody named Count Dracula from Sesame Street, and they were like, they said, no. He goes, the response was, that doesn't count. No, he does count.
That is a count. Of course it counts. It's a count.
He is the count.
Count Dracula.
One.
The count. Count Chocolate. What is that guy? Count
Chocula.
Count Chocula. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, man,
we do eventually have to talk about business, right?
We are. Yes. So, I mean, we spent the last 3.5 minutes talking about nothing.
We're good at that too. We should have a whole nother podcast on that.
Well, I mean, so obviously we're both big, huge Astros fans. So if we want to talk about that real quick, we can say, hey, Alex Bregman is still not signed with anybody and his prospects are disappearing quickly. And so it's about time that the Astros welcome him back in. He just has to talk to that dumb. This is the reason why we ended last podcast the way we did, talking about making sure you pay attention to the people that work for you. Because Scott, I can't remember how to say his last name, Bezos or Bassos, whatever it was. It's not like Jeff Bezos, but whatever. His agent has absolutely screwed him, trying to tell him he was going to get some kind of a $200 million thing.
Yeah. You got to know your worth. You got to know the price of things. You got to be realistic.
Sorry.
JP has monsters under his screen.
So
he's got drug problems. We'll talk about that another day too.
Yes. So, anyhow, moving on from there, we transitioned last week into we discussed why it's so important to choose the right team, to work with the right people. And so the thing is we've already gotten started, and now we want to kind of talk about a couple of issues that you want to ask your real estate broker and your lending partner, lending broker. And so we talked about why it's important to have a good lending partner and why it's important that your lending partner have multiple options to be able to present to you. And one of the reasons why we look at trying to go with brokers as opposed to just going straight to your bank.
And it's really
and
hard for me to say you should definitely go to a broker over a bank when I'm a broker myself. But I think JP can attest to these reasons that if you just think about logical math and the
so
other part of
it was
you don't,
crazy.
the banker doesn't work for you.
No, so a
Broker
really good.
works for you.
So I've got two good friends that just so happen to run across each other. One of them I talk about all the time on my Facebook page, and he's a car salesman, and he works for Gay Pontiac GMC Cadillac. And so my buddy saw me referring him and picked it up and went to go see Roland. And his name is
I
Roland
just want to
Boyce.
make a disclaimer for today's audience, depending on who we're getting. That's actually a real dealership. He's not calling Pat Pontiac gay.
No.
I just want to put that in there.
Yeah.
In today's world.
The gentleman that owns it, his last name is actually Gay.
Yeah.
And so the dealership name is Gay Pontiac Buick and Cadillac. So, but anyhow, so the thing is, he goes and see Roland Boyce. So I will always push anybody that's interested in a GM or Kia pickup or GM or Kia vehicle to go see Roland, because that dude is on point. My buddy goes to him, and when Don shows up, his wife had a specific car she wanted, or SUV she wanted to see. She wanted to see a Cadillac XTC. I think it's kind of the mid-range SUV. It's definitely not the Tahoe style. The Expedition, is it? Not Expedition. What is it? Cadillac. Anyway, I don't know all the Cadillac models right now, especially apparently. But anyhow, so she's looking at this XTC, and when he gets in the back, Don is about 2 inches shorter than me, and he just doesn't fit. He's like this, driving down the road, and he was like, "This is just not going to work." And so when they get out, he's like, "It's not going to work. Both of my sons are taller than I am, and they're not going to fit in the back of this vehicle, and I'm not going to make them get taco neck." That's a throwback from back in the day. If I'm not going to make them get taco neck, in order to be comfortable, for my wife to get this exact car. So they started looking around, and sure enough, they found a GM vehicle. But they looked at Cadillac, GMCs, Buicks, and so they kind of looked at everything before they landed on something. It's kind of the same thing when you're dealing with a commercial loan broker. He takes your circumstances and takes those circumstances to see where they actually fit in the banking world. Whereas if you take your circumstances to a lender and you don't fit in their box, they just say no.
Yep.
And it's just that simple. And it's not that we're dissing banks, because we both have friends that are very good and honest and awesome bankers and lenders. But at the end of the day, they still have a box that their people want you to fill. And if you don't fit that box, the answer is not sorry. And they're not designed to pivot. They're designed to tell you no.
It's time too. The reason that this is kind of happening and brokers are becoming more relevant is that, back in the day, you had so many banks. You didn't necessarily have a ton of credit unions. You didn't have a ton of online banks. You didn't have a ton of options. Now there's just so many options, so many banks, so many types of banks, regional, state, whatever, that for you to really truly get the best fit, you really do need to look at everything and not just go to a specific bank, because it's not always that as much as we say, you go to that bank and then you're done, because if you don't fit it, it's not that bank's fault. They just don't service that. And so we kind of help you bridge that gap and make the process a little simpler. And we do a lot of legwork for you too. Man, dealing with some people, I think everybody can attest that they don't always like dealing. They may be social people, but we all have times where we just don't like dealing with people. This is one of those things, where we can kind of help with that too. So I get along with everybody for the most part. But with that, let's get into the questions that you want to ask while you're looking for these people. We may have touched on some of these things, but JP, if I'm looking at a real estate broker, what are some things I want to look for? I know we've actually talked about this personally before.
Yes. So it really kind of here's the big thing is most of your real estate brokers specialize. So they don't all do land. They don't all do multifamily. They don't all do industrial. They don't all do retail. They don't all do buy and sell. Some of them just do leasing. And so my and I don't know how other states operate, but I know that in the state of Texas, apparently I'm eating a beard here. So, yeah, well, you're not doing that anymore.
We have these. We have actually some of JP's beard being put into baggies, and those will be sold
on our merch
store.
In our merch website. That's right.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. So it's in the state of Texas. I can legally operate anywhere in the state of Texas on any kind of real estate I choose to operate on. There are some very vague requirements that the Texas Real Estate Commission, also known as TREC, passes down. Now, that being said, there are also people like me who specialize in an area instead of something specific in industry type. So I was born and raised in Clear Lake, Texas. I was actually, on Clear Lake. I was born and raised in League City, Texas. I graduated from high school in Clear Creek. I've lived in Seabrook. I've lived in Kemah and League City. I've always patroned places in Nassau Bay and Webster, which now I've literally encompassed the entire lake. And so when people come to me, I say I don't specialize in anything but Clear Lake. Now, I've done business comfortably outside of the Clear Lake area, Northwest Houston, Northeast Houston. I'm fully capable of handling things outside of it. But when somebody asks me what my specialty is, this is my specialty. And Clear Lake is what I aim at. And I try to do my best to keep aware of all things business in my specialty area, which means I do some industrial, because there is industrial in Kemah and Clear Lake and everything there. There's also tons of hotels. Now, I'm not a big hospitality person, so I would probably refer a hospitality out. Multifamily. I handle small multifamily. I will not be pushing myself over the 50 plus mark. There are agents that I would refer it out to or would work with them on specifically to do a multifamily like that. But again, anything outside of that, retail, industrial, land, all of that, I'm more than capable of doing. So those are the first questions: is what's your specialty? And it could be
let me cut in there. So that kind of brings up a good point for you to ask, but also to identify as possibly a red flag is if you go into a broker and they say they literally do everything. My next question to find out if that's valid and a good thing would be, how long have you been a broker? Because if they've just gotten into being a broker, real estate broker, and they're doing everything, that might not be a good fit. Maybe on retail, maybe you get away with retail. Most brokers, I think, operate in retail. But if you're in a more specialized one, you probably don't want to do the general guy.
You'd actually be surprised. There's at least 5 of our 14 or 16 agents in our office that refuse to touch retail. They refer it out.
Really?
They don't want to do leasing. They'll sell it. They'll list it, but that's not their bag. They really I love retail. I personally like being able to dive into the numbers. I don't mind looking at it from a leasing standpoint. So I can either be a part of the tenant's representative or be a landlord representative. I've got no problems in either direction there. On top of that, because I have enough information and I've done it enough to both lease and be a tenant rep, I also don't have any problem selling or buying either. So, and retail is kind of, because Clear Lake is such a well-populated area, there's lots and lots of retail and retail office type kind of space around. And so, yeah, I mean, like that's just kind of my bag. I like it. And there's a lot of agents that don't.
That's a good point. That's a good point. What else? What else would you look for in red flags for the people out there that are shopping for a good broker?
So when it comes down to it, really knowing it's not just about somebody's time, because the way Trek is set up, if somebody's been in the business for 10 years or 15 years, and let's say they've been an actual commercial broker for 15 years, and they've decided that they're going to do something out of the norm and they're going to help you find an industrial warehouse, but they've never done an industrial warehouse before. It's actually their broker's responsibility to make sure that they are paired with somebody who knows what the heck they're talking about. So one of the new rules that Trek just passed in 2024 actually goes back to, hey, you can't legally represent somebody with no experience unless you have somebody experienced to go with you. And so you're really the age of somebody, or not even somebody's age, but how well tenured somebody is on a particular item shouldn't be too big a deal. Where I really struggle is when we start talking about properties that are way out in Abilene. And I ain't never been to Abilene. I've lived in Lexington, Texas my whole life. I have driven through Amarillo. I have driven through Dallas, Waxahachie, Wichita Falls. And if you talk to some of my friends, they'll make fun of you and tell you I've been to Marfa a couple of times too. But I've never been to Abilene. I've got no business trying to do business in Abilene. And if you talk to somebody that says, oh, I've got a Texas real estate license, I can do business in Abilene. And then you find out, well, when was the last time you went over there and checked on the businesses? And you're like, well, the state of Texas lets me do whatever I want. And I'm like, that's a big ass red flag. You should be running.
Yeah, it's not really like a home where, for the most part, across the state of Texas, your real estate deals are going to be about the same. I mean, we got into this actually on a deal that me and you were working on was,
Yep.
There's a lot of differences between each property, ergo why you don't even go get funding first on a commercial property, because you have to figure out so many other metrics to do that. Now back to what we were focused on with if you come across a broker and let's say they're under the 6-month mark, which is going to happen. I mean, there's turnover, there's new people coming in. What would you say you were, because and you've gone through this, how far are you in now? You're a year and something?
No. So in commercial, almost 4 years in the business.
Oh, a lot longer. Okay.
Yeah. In the business in total, about 6.5, almost 7 years.
Okay. My point being, though, you were at the 6-month mark at least one time in your career.
Right.
So if you were at that 6-month mark and you think back to when you were in that situation, what did you feel the most comfortable about, so that if someone does get someone under that range, what do you think they would be most capable of doing? The retail, what do you think is the simplest?
So I think that's the next thing is it's not about you. The hard thing is trying to judge somebody's confidence level. If they balk, bail. I never was scared. I didn't give a crap what you came to me looking for, needing help with, or what. It didn't matter. I was going to produce. And the reason is I surrounded myself with a bunch of people with a ton of experience, and they were all incredibly helpful. And because of that, I never felt like I wasn't supported. And so even though I had to go through this mentorship program where I was this mentee that to take everything to my director, I was so well supported that I never felt like I couldn't handle it. I just needed to make sure that I portrayed a strong image to my client. And when my client asked, "Oh, this seems like this is your first gig," and I was like, "It's my second," and they're like, "You're obviously getting somebody that helps you because you're doing great." It's just that simple. Be honest, but show confidence.
Yeah. I think that's 100%. I mean, that crosses into both of our fields. Is I would rather have someone tell me, I don't know the answer. I'm going to get it for you though, rather than just jumping into things. And I mean, you need people with confidence for sure, but we can't know everything. Even now, even the years I've had probably about the same within banking and lending. I'm probably about 8 years now between banking and this. And then before that, I was in manufacturing. So sometimes that plays into my experience too, with so many what did I just say? With manufacturing type deals.
Yeah.
I don't know why engineering kept just cramming in my head. And I'm like, I can't get manufacturing out. Anyways. But I mean, that definitely plays into it as well, is the experience, the confidence, the ability to check yourself, make sure you look out for those resources.
Right.
Because like I said, even with the 8 years, there's things I don't know. I remember a long time ago, because I pick on the side. This is a good story to share. A quick one. I went into this shop, and I do the same thing I do with commercial lending. I reach out to people who are in that space, because there's just so many products. When you look at how many old antiques there are out there, especially when you get into that much higher price stuff, there's a ton of things. Now they're rare to find, but there's a ton of things, and you literally just can't
like
be
your
an
birthing
expert.
chairs. Like your birth.
I'm gonna put those in the new venue. We're gonna
I bet.
We're gonna burst some people.
Hell yeah.
At the bar. It's a birthing bar. No, well, they may be procreated there. I don't know if they're gonna birth there. Anyways, so I walk in, I'm talking to this lady, and I probably talked to her a couple times. She's very well known. If she's still alive, she was very well known in Houston and the Montrose markets, and had some just great stuff. And I was picking her brain, and I said, tell me a story about, when you found something really cool. And she goes, well, and this was the lesson. The story was the lesson that I'm trying to preach here is, she goes, I had this guy come in, and he was looking all around, and I saw him just focus on these bottles, and I had them priced at like $200 a piece, because they were high-end old bottles, but I didn't know much about them. I just knew they were older, and that wasn't my specialty. And I said, oh, okay. And so but she noticed this guy was like hugging him, being very delicate with him, way over $200 worth of bottles. And he brings it up, and before she rings him up, she goes, hey, I'm not going to change the price on you. My price is my price, but I can tell these are more valuable than what I priced them at. And he goes, yeah, man, they are. And he goes, these are, I don't know, 1500s pirate rum bottles. Like, they're worth, I think she said they were worth like $4,000 a bottle, and she had 4 of them or 3 of them. So her $600, and these are worth $12,000.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And she's like, the lesson learned. I can't know it all, and I got to lean on other people. So she took it like, she's like, man, I probably could have caught that if I'd run this out to more people. I've got a guy in Puerto Rico. When I get Coca-Cola stuff, this is how much I network. I was in Puerto Rico, and I met this dude. I became friends with him, and this guy's got just an amazing collection of Coca-Cola stuff. But he also has some island stuff. I've got a Puerto Rican. It's a liquor bottle advertising piece from like early 1900s. That's a fan, but it's I forget the, but it's a main rum. In that area. And so I got that from him, but he would show me all this other stuff. And I still talk to the guy, because you never know who's got value to your life. This is why you shouldn't attack people in the first place. But just goes to show, you never know.
So I guess the next thing is it's not just about the networking. The one thing that you got to be really leery of is, because unlike that lady that had the tenure and the depth and obviously the backing to accept that she literally just let 7,000.
I would have been like, nope.
Yeah, 7,000. And the thing is it's like, she just let $7,000 walk out the door, and she let it walk out the door because she didn't know. And now she does. Well, the title of our presentation, or the title of our podcast for today in the past couple of weeks, is New Year, New You, New Startup. If you're in a new startup, it's even more of a reason why it's important to pay attention, because most startups do not have the capital to throw away that kind of chunk of change. So we've talked about this before. Do they have referral partners? Your broker, either one of them, whether you've chosen to go with a big name real estate company or a small name real estate company, or a big name broker, a loan broker, or an actual direct lender going to the bank, is what do their partnerships look like? Because if the answer is just no, I don't have partnerships, or no, I can't do this, or no, I can't do that, then you're going to have problems. Because if you don't have, if as a real estate agent, you come to me, you don't have a business plan, I'm going to immediately push you off to Amy Reed over at the SBDC and be like, you need to talk to her. And it's not because I don't like you or don't trust you. It's because it doesn't matter how smart you are. You haven't thought of every potential scenario. And it's my responsibility to make sure that you're making a good decision. And I can't make that good decision. I can't help you make a good decision if I don't know that you're well equipped. And so this deal that Josh and I are working on, the listing agent for this piece of property was very, very cautious with us, because the previous 3 people that had put it under contract just fell through and did not deliver. And I'm sure there's a lot of reasons.
Due diligence.
Yeah. And so that's the other thing is we started doing our due diligence before we ever submitted a letter of intent or a contract. And so as of later this afternoon, we should probably be under contract. But the first thing he called was, yeah, but have you checked your parking with the city? Have you talked to these people? Have you talked to these? Like, dude, we've already talked to the city about this stuff. We've already talked to the EDC. They're on board. We've already talked to these people. So we have already started the process before we even really dove into the process. And that's kind of the thing.
We even went back, and because we have resources, we reached out to the people who had already gone through contracts and backed out for whatever reasons, and found out what their reasons were, so we could make sure we weren't making the mistakes. So, right. I mean, that's the depth that you need to go to if you want to increase your chances for getting through with all.
And because not just getting through. If you want to increase your chance for success, this particular building is the perfect spot, and everybody knows it's the perfect spot, but nobody had the wherewithal to think outside of the box, and to stop and say, hey, this is an option. Hey, this is an option. Or, hey, how about I just go talk to the city about what they want? And when they heard you go, oh, yes, this is going to be amazing.
And that's a good point to bring up. We talked about prep work. So let's highlight that too, is, you should reach out to the city before you get into contract, because you want to see if they're even excited. I mean, to an extent, most businesses that come in, EDC is going to be excited about.
Right.
But you really want to get into the deeper questions when you go to talk to EDC. Don't be falsely led into, oh, they're excited for me. You want to ask the questions. These guys were you got to realize, you also want to find the capabilities of the city. The intricate part with this is a smaller city, but they have a lot of big tax base. And so they got actually an influx of money for the amount of people they have to support, which is awesome.
Well, they're split really well, 50-50 homes and 50-50, like right down the middle, just about, in commercial property and that, which just doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. And they got big, and even right next to them, they've still, even though that's not even part of them, they still got big anchor stores to this small, because as a lender, when we look at things, their properties are ranked also. People don't know this, but these properties are ranked. And so you can tell a lot about, and so mine would actually be ranked a little bit lower, just because of the fact that there's not a ton of people around it, but there's a lot of anchor stores already there. There's a lot of pathways for the people to get there. It's a tourist area. Other cities that are around, when you incorporate the wider array.
And the other thing is, your particular business plan may potentially need a lot of hotel space. And so if you're going to be looking at some hotel space, there's plenty of hotels in a 2-minute drive from this place as well.
A lot of the business plan incorporates how people are coming to stay there, and that, it's not just going to be, it's obviously going to be the locals, but if I only could depend on only the locals, the
You never
business wouldn't
survive.
survive. But this type of business that we're working with is very much alive because of the fact that people will travel for good
Stuff.
music and events. That's as
Stuff.
close as I'll get. So yeah, I mean, you've got to get creative. You got to run down everything. Me and my wife always have, this is one of the things that we bicker between. And she's slowly coming around to my point of view.
I won't
But
tell you.
The way I look at everything, not just life, not just deals, not just how I operate, and I think this is because I played sports. And I think people who played sports, at least competitively, I won't say professionally, but I played up to semi-pro. And then I played in college, both rugby and soccer. And I think there's something that's instilled in you to always look at things positively. Like, there's always a chance. I just got to push and push. I got to do my best. I got to give my team the most. So I think that was already instilled in me. Whereas my wife looks at things, and it's good to have someone that thinks this way, because they might think outside the box for what you're not seeing. But
Right.
You should always spin it to a positive, because it's like, I want the solution. I don't want to focus on the problem, because problems tend to cut things off. I want to be aware of problems. I want to be aware that there's parking space minimums on the.
But I don't need to know. I don't need to know every detail of why the problem exists and go down to the very start of history. Exactly.
I just need to solve it.
And I've one of my phrases that I usually use is, look, I need to put the shovel down. I need to stop digging into this problem. I just need to get it fixed. I just need to move forward. Like, if I'm digging, it's in the same as looking in the past. I'm trying to find something from the past, and I don't need it. Like, the problem is here. It's on the surface. How do I get past that?
It becomes a time waster, and it also becomes something that stops you from seeking, sometimes when you focus too much on the negative. I mean, there's things that obviously are going to keep you from doing certain things. There are definitely points that are not passable, but for the most part, there's creative ways around it. And honestly, I think it's very limited that happens. Very, very few things. To me, about the only thing I could think of was, I want to build a business in space, but I can't, obviously breathe in space. So I'd have to have NASA and all these other things. But that's the thing. You could, if you really built it out, you could do that. So, but it's obviously not something I'm going to focus on.
So let's start with that. So, the other thing we wanted to do is ask some questions about lending. I think you've already started breaking into that quite a bit. And we talked about it a little bit last time, why you would choose a broker over a direct lender like a bank, a credit union.
I'll talk broker to broker, because that's important too.
Okay. And
because broker to banker, we've already kind of run through that. Bankers are good. You want some good bankers, but just understand that their metrics are theirs. They work for the bank. If you go to them and that's what you bank on, as they say, that term is actually losing its meaning, because you can't bank on a bank anymore.
No.
So then you get into brokers, and brokers are all over the place right now, but this is changing, and we're all for the changes. So a lot of licensing is being put into the market for brokers. We are licensed already in certain states. We're continuing to increase our licensing to other states. And then we have relationships that get us temporarily around those for the time being. But our focus is to continue to do that. We are very in favor of licensing. We are very in favor of taking the Wild West and making it more professional, because while going to a broker can help you a ton and save time, it can also be a huge time waste and a ton of money if you get the wrong broker. Right. So these are the things I would look for if you were asking me, what questions do you want to ask? I would ask, do you have an upfront fee? The only way you pay an upfront fee is if this is a very difficult project, and the broker should tell you that upfront and why. And even then, It's very, very few times that you would pay.
So
upfront.
we've talked about this before. So if an upfront fee would be something that would be incredibly difficult and very, very high likelihood of not getting through and not getting lending. So you're going to waste a lot of time as a guy that's trying to help somebody out
for no guarantee.
Give me one example of what you would consider that you would say, hey, I need to charge an upfront fee for.
I would say if you're at that point where you've exhausted multiple loans and it becomes exponentially harder to secure more loans, you may pay up front just because of the fact that guy's going to have to go through a lot, even beyond his normal portfolio of lenders, to find you something that's fair. And
Right.
even then, he might not find something fair. Some people have to resort to MCAs, and MCAs are not great unless you're using them the right way. And you have, again, the most important thing is an exit strategy.
Explain what an MCA is.
MCA is a merchant cash advance. You'll see them a lot of times, restaurants, retail, they use Square and all these other ones.
Yeah.
They'll talk you into it pretty quick. You're in business and they start seeing your cash flow. They send you an offer based on your cash flow. And it's not a bad loan, but again, the number one thing you look for when you are looking at a loan is not just what is the terms to get into the loan, but what is my exit strategy to get out of the loan.
Right.
And so people forget that, and then they get pigeonholed into something, especially hard money. If you go into hard money and you don't have an exit plan, you killed your company or business or whatever.
Yeah. So people, you have to understand, like when you talk about a hard money loan, when you see your payment, you're like, oh my gosh, that payment's a lot less than I thought it was going to be. Well, that's because that's just the interest you're not paying.
You're not paying anything off. You're paying tons of fees. You're not building. I guess you're technically building some equity, but for the most part, you're paying off interest only.
Right.
And here's the thing: true, good, hard money guys, they want you in and out. They don't want you there for years, anyways. But I did learn the other day. I saw this. And I'm like, what are they doing to offer me this? I had a hard money loan that came back out of Florida. We weren't going to take it. It was at 15%, which is pretty high for this type of deal.
Yeah.
It was construction, which is semi-risky, but for that, they were built for rural properties. This was on the border of being a rural property. And so I didn't even consider, but they had theirs up to 17 years. Now, it wasn't termed for 17 years, but it was
what was it termed for?
Huh?
What was it?
They had it broke down to 6 months and up to a year, but then they had the 17-year thing on there too. I mean, it was a little confusing, but talking to Mike, my business partner.
So that's another thing. That's another thing that you really have to. Something else you really have to understand what your broker and your agent or their job is. It's not just about getting you money and finding the right property. It's making it understandable. If your broker or your agent, your commercial broker, or your lending broker can't explain it to you in a way that makes sense to you, then they're probably in the wrong business, or they're just not your guy. That's just not your person.
And you need to ask more questions. Definitely.
Yeah.
Or find another broker.
Yeah. And if they get frustrated because you ask too many questions, that's another red flag. Is like, do I really want to sit down and go through an 18 or 20 page or 75 or 150 page contract with my client, depending on the situation? No. Why do you think I make my money? Because I will sit down and go through an 18 to 150 page contract with my client, line by line, question by question.
I've noticed with JP, every time that you've handed off, and I tend to do this too, and when I had you review that lease that one time, you're like, he always leads off, and I always lead off by saying, make sure you read this, make sure you understand this. A good broker and a good lending or real estate broker is not going to go through and read it to you on the first presentation, because they'd be doing that. Some of them are 60, 70 pages. What they are doing, what they should be, they should be held to is at least saying, hey, make sure you read this so that you understand this. And then if you have questions, ask. Every broker should be open to reviewing it with you on the parts you don't understand. Unfortunately, a lot of people get into them, they don't read them, they don't look at it, and then they come back and will blame the broker. And we say, hey, we gave you this. We reviewed the basics to make sure it was a fair deal to market. And then you are supposed to read the responsibilities of that as well. And if you don't understand any of that, let us know. So it's a give and take on that point. So just make sure that when you guys are getting contracts, read the contract. If you have to, I mean, on our thing with this deal that we're working on, you know, it's worth quite a bit of money. I'm going to make sure my broker looks at it. I'm going to make sure that my bank looks at it. I'm going to make sure that everybody looks at it and says, yep, this is to market. This is a market standard.
Right.
Now it goes both ways too, because a lot of people go, oh, I'm getting screwed over. And we sit there and go, no, this is based on the market. That happens a lot too. And you really should rely on.
It's important. It's important to be able to trust your person. So, like last night, I was going over a contract with a client of mine, and I told him, I was like, look, here's the deal. You know, we talked about this earnest money that was going to be left over for feasibility. And so their compensation for feasibility, we always go in as low as we possibly can. So I'm like, yeah, $1,000 for this property, no big deal. I think that there's a good chance they're going to turn it down and ask for more money. And it's like, but I'm not uncomfortable. I work for you. I don't work for the person selling, and I sure as heck don't work for the agent selling. And so if you tell me to go in with it saying $1, I'm going to be like, yeah, this is probably not a good offer, and we're probably wasting our time. You can't say, hey, we're going to go in for, you know, $1,000 for 60 days of feasibility. I've got it. I've pushed those through before. That's not a big deal, but it's not quite as strong. And it kind of just depends on where your situation is. But either way, at the end of the day, you explain what you've got going on to your client. And then you say, it doesn't matter what I explained to you. It matters that I work for you. And as long as you're not asking me to do crazy things that are completely out of the ordinary, then it is what it is. Like, I definitely would never send a contract off with $1. That's just not going to happen. You're wasting
telling
my
me if
time.
a broker, if a client was like gung ho, wanted, see, because I was gonna piggyback off what you're saying and say, again,
There's
we deal in averages and standards of the market. So whatever we tell you is averages and standards. So if we give that information to you, don't hold it against us if you go no, and then you somehow offer $1 and they accept it.
So if we're talking about,
it doesn't mean the broker's wrong, is what I'm saying.
So what I'm saying is somebody comes in and they want to offer full price, but it's going to take 60 days in financing, and they want to only give $1 for a feasibility period, then the answer is probably no. Almost always, 99.9999% of the time, no. However, if it's $1 million property and a guy comes in and says, this is my bank account, boom, you can see I got $1 million cash. I want to close in 30 days. I need a 15-day feasibility, but I'm not giving these people more than $1. Then I'm like, yeah, that $1 million cash, that's a pretty big swing. If I'm buying $1 million property and I need 30 days to go through everything, including closing, and I'm only asking for 15 days, and you say, no, I want 1,000 or 100,000, whatever you want as your feasibility, I'll walk away. But I mean, dude, you got $1 million, and you're saying, hey, I'm just going to pay you $1 for feasibility. Well, I'm only losing 30 days. I'm still going to be marketing the property. Nothing changes there. And we just move forward. You know, it's just that simple. We just move forward. So yeah, I would, if under the right circumstances, but the right circumstances would have to be like everything else lined out perfect. And again, it was kind of like the contract last night. My clients came in, they offered full price, full asking price, very, very little contingency for anything, just like a, hey, this is what it is, and no questions asked, and more or less let the seller know that we're going to be doing all this stuff, and this is how we're planning on moving forward, and gave them a lot of information. So to me, saying, hey, $1,000, no big deal. They balked, and then we had to bump it up to 2,000. It is what it is. No big deal.
What else? Now, what else would you? So, from a real estate broker's perspective, I answered a couple of the red flags and things, but you are also at times, and with me, you looked to qualify me. What are some things from your perspective are you looking for on the broker side to qualify people so that people can get those points of view as well? That point.
I had a client that you and I worked with about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, something like that. He had this feeling, this mantra that was like, hey, rich people don't use other people's money. Or sorry, rich people don't use cash. So I don't feel like I should have to use cash. And he didn't understand why. And we kind of went over that before. Tillman Fertitta could probably get away with getting a $500 million loan with no cash down. But that's also because he owns $2.5 billion worth of property that probably had. Yeah, he's got $1.5 billion worth of equity on that $2.5 billion of property. And so you look at that guy and they go, yeah, well, he got a $500 million loan. I'm just asking for $500,000. Do you have a property that's worth, 5 times worth the loan? Because if you do, and you've got 50% equity in it, then yeah, I guarantee you, I can find a bank that's going to be willing to say, sure, I'll give you $500,000 if you got a, $2.5 million property that you have $1.5 million in equity on. Yeah, there's no problem. They know that you're going to be able to, they're going to turn around and they repo your $2.5 million property. They make out good.
He's also got a good balance. He's got liquidity and he's got assets. I mean, he's like the perfect, at least right now, as far as what we can guess, he's got good risk is what they're looking at. You're buying and selling. A bank buys and sells money. A lender buys and sells money.
But that's not what we're talking about today.
Today, yeah, I'm just saying
new you. No, I'm not trying to tell you. I'm talking to other people.
Oh.
Like we're not talking about Tillman Fertitta. Tillman Fertitta doesn't need to come on my show or watch my show to figure out how to freaking do business. This dude's been doing business. I think he should come on to tell people how to do business.
I would love to broker some of those deals.
Well, I would love just to have him on the show. If I never got to do anything else and talk to him on this show, I would be stoked.
All right, I'm dying. It's my last wish. We're gonna send him,
right.
Get him on this show.
I'm a Make-A-Wish adult. What's your wish? I want Tillman Fertitta on my podcast.
There we go.
So I mean,
it's as simple as it is.
But like I said, again, this is a new year, new you, new startup. And so you're a new startup, which if you're a startup, that means that you've never done this before. You don't have the money. You don't have the clout. You sure as heck don't have the experience. And so it's time to move past that. You have to have cash. So if you don't have cash, big red flag. Where are you getting it from? If you don't have a plan to get it from anywhere, then I'm moving on. And maybe I'm wrong sometime and maybe somebody else picks you up, but not me.
But what I'm asking is, what are you looking for in a broker partner?
Oh,
a lending broker partner. Yeah.
Well, he's got to be sexy.
Give your perspective. Obviously, you got to have someone sexy.
Yeah. She's got to be sexy. If he's got to be sexy. Number two, he cannot shave his beard ever again.
You know why I did? It was an accident. I scalped and I go, shit.
No, so honestly, the how you and I met was perfect. And so I met Josh at a party, more or less just I almost said a franchising event, not a franchising event. My vocabulary just shrank.
I don't remember where we met.
Well, I know where we met. We met at Mark's house.
Oh, that's right. Which was a big networking event for our
networking. Area. That's the word I was looking for. Network. So we made it this big networking event with all kinds of people and real estate, lending, and Mark happens to be an insurance guy. So insurance. So you got all these guys coming over, and I was invited by a mutual friend of ours who works for a great bank called Allegiance Bank. His name is Mark Charbonneau. Oh my God. I'm sorry, Steve Charbonneau, who is one of our first
on record, Steve.
Yeah, Steve Charbonneau is one of our very first guests on the podcasts. And so, the thing is he came and brought me over, and next thing you know, I go and get my little glass of scotch. I'm smoking a cigar, and he introduces me to Josh. And first I was like, yeah, whatever. Josh dresses a lot like me, so I didn't take him very serious. It was like, here's a baseball cap, t-shirt, shorts, and a flip-flops. And I was like, I don't know who this this guy's the
This is
manservant
not
for the
how I
owner.
would dress if I was just getting into brokering. I've got a lot of relationships, and so does JP. So just keep that in mind too. Like, don't look at us as a standard. I do business in this, but I've earned that. So, and JP's earned that.
And even then it's one of those things where for me it's all about branding, right? Like for me, there's people that know me as the guy that's always in some kind of Astros gear year round, 24 hours a day. And so when people see me not in Astros gear, they also don't recognize me. And so it's kind of part of my branding. My company's name is Crush City Realty Group, based off the Astros and so on and so forth. And so like I go and meet clients, but I'm still dressed nice. It's just I mean, wearing a jersey or a polo or something like that that has Astros branding on it. But either way, it was one of those things where I really kind of pushed him off a little bit because I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I started working on a deal with Steve, and he was like, nah, man, this is never going to go through, back when he was with another bank. And he was like, but you should totally call Josh. I'm like, Josh, that guy? Yeah. Call him. I'm like, okay, cool. And we kind of got started, and I'd toss a couple of them at you that I wasn't very good at pre-qualifying yet. And you're like, dude, you're killing me. You've got to pre-qualify these people. And so you helped me get better. And that's really how I decided to choose you as my primary lender. Was you weren't just like, dude, this guy's a loser, get him away.
Yeah, my heart.
You were like, hey, what do I need to do to help this guy actually bring me business that's going to pay for itself, And so now, yeah, we still haven't done a whole lot of deals together just because not everything fits. But
well, and there's two things to that, because I've learned this over time. I actually don't mind if partners don't bring me some stuff. I'd rather they don't bring me stuff until they really have one. Ergo, why Covo Capital is so good is we underwrite those deals in house. We're looking at that. We don't toss it until we know it's qualified and where it's going to go. A lot of brokers don't. A lot of real estate.
That's the other thing is
I would rather not flood JP with bad deals, but I'm giving him tons of deals. And right. JP's like, oh, that's a great partner. And then he goes, man, but he's wasting my time 90% of the time.
And so that's the thing is like, I know for a fact you can underwrite stuff. And so like one of my new clients that just passed over to you last week, we talked about it. You got her pre-qualified. She's ready to rock and roll. And he's like, all right, go have fun. Just pace, buy some stuff, buy it, buy, but a lot of that's because of your underwriting process.
And the other thing is too, that I know he saw this too. And even if he didn't, I'll let him know, when I get clients from brokers, real estate brokers, I also coach a ton to what they need, not necessarily what they need to know about the real estate side of things, but the real estate that side of things that affect the lending side of things. Because again, it's that preparing them. So we went through, okay, if you go and if you just want to go ground up, there's a lot of difficulty to it. I wouldn't want to do that if I was you. Do you have the experience? So if you buy into something, can you show the experience if it's an existing business or a new business? When you buy multifamily, you have to consider this. When you buy a hot product right now is commercial office warehouse buildings. Great return, longer clients, longer terms on them. So I mean, going through all those things from the lender's perspective, to tell, especially when they're asking, what's going to be easy. This particular client wants to have something that's very hands off, that she's going to get a decent return on, and it's relatively safe. And so you get into the conversation of risk versus reward. How can we maximize the margins on what you want to do, but also understand that the lower risk you go, the less margins there are. And so, we had a really in-depth conversation. I think it's going to help her focus. That's the other part with a real estate broker is that's sometimes the worst thing, to have a client who has no idea what they want to do and they're not focused. And you kind of give them some of the good businesses that are out there, but that's a time waste too if they don't.
And she's already been talking to the agent that referred her to me, and she's honed her focus to where now, instead of just kind of being all willy-nilly, like, hey, I just want to go spend some money, to now she's like, I really want to go into this industrial space. Where can I break into this industrial space in a good spot? And so that's where we're at now. And so now it's just a matter of, hey, let's get some things down the pipes and really start getting her introduced into what industrial in the area is going to look like. And again, because I specialize in the Clear Lake area, which is where she's from, I can actually direct her to things that are close to home.
Have you thought about an intro to our friend Kevin?
No, because he doesn't want any partners.
Well, then that's a no.
Yeah. So, but
if he did, that would be a great connection.
But there's a couple.
That would put him over the hill for sure.
Well, so there's a couple good spots right down the street from him though that are for sale that are nice. In a really good entry level type kind of a place because it's already put together, fairly new, and they've already got tenants in them. So it's not like, whatever.
Awesome.
So you guys just heard us talk about something that's real quick and easy. Like we speak the lingo. If you don't understand what we just talked about, then you need to step back and ask questions.
We're kind of getting them in the comments.
Yeah, yes, you can. So we're getting kind of close to the edge on this one. I didn't think we moved quite as far next time as we will. We were hoping this was
going to be big questions though that we put on our agenda.
They're
pretty big questions.
So next week,
let's just preview next week then.
That's what I was about to do. See, look.
Get out of my head, man.
He's my boo. so I mean, like
the bro love.
Like
that's why I shaved, JP, for you.
No, you did not shave for me. That is for damn sure.
Oh, you want beard on beard?
Yeah, heck yeah, man. So so the thing is so next week we're going to start trying to go through and dive more into Josh's world. I'm going to get away from my world a little bit, and we're going to start doing, so we're going to look at DSCR loans, equipment loans, different types of things between investing, because there's a massive difference between an investment and a capital improvement project. Kind of going through those things. This is not my realm. That's all his realm. Once we get past investment, you're looking at capital improvement projects where you already own the actual land or the building, and you're trying to do better. Then you can still do SBAs as well as other types. So next week,
and I could go into like 10 days worth of stuff on these loans, but we're going to do a high level view. Quickly go through like the main points of them. But again, if you guys have questions on this stuff, and we get into any topic where you're thinking, hey, what about this? We're always available for you guys. Talk,
right.
Put it in the comments, directly call us, directly email us, whatever. Right. We're an open book, and we love to help people. That's part of what makes us good at what we do. And what I think when you see people that are good at what they do, they typically are the same people that want to help other people as well, because the reward is so much better for giving than it is, because you're going to get back as much, if not 10 times more than you give. So
if you treat people good, they're always going to give back to you. Always. Yeah. I mean, it's just, that's just
by
the way.
An introduction, by a deal. I mean, there's just so many ways,
The Go-Giver. It's one of my things. It's one of my favorite.
I love that book.
Things.
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest books, man.
I had a boss at Wells Fargo that I really enjoyed my time with there. She's a smart lady. And I remember her telling me one day, and I didn't really think about it. She told me two things. She told me, I watched you in my interview. She took me to lunch, and she looked at how I treated the waiter. And I was like, and that always stuck out to me. I was like, man. And so now I always ask a waiter, what's your name? I don't want to say hey to you, or a bartender even. I always do that now. But two, the other thing she looked at was, man, that just blanked out of my head. We're going to have to edit this one because I don't remember. What the heck was I talking about? What the heck was I talking about?
And that'll wrap up your Bizfluent podcast for the day. We appreciate you guys watching. Like, share.
I should have had more of an agenda. What did she tell me?
She said that if you were watching, like she watched how you were treating the waiter, waitress, the server.
That was one, and I was like, I got to get that in there because it was a good look. But the other thing, I remember now. Okay, so the other part of it was, she goes, no call is a bad call. We in our world we do a lot of calls, and they're all usually in about 10, 15 minutes. And she goes, I've had people that were your worst client. They might never be your client actually. And they don't have money. They're a startup. They live with their mom. They don't have any assets. They've been a waiter, but they've never owned a restaurant. I mean, just the worst client could be a time suck. So I made sure that I only did my 15 minutes. So I didn't make him a time suck, but I gave him the information and I got a deal not because he got what he needed to get done, but I did give him the tools to figure that out. But he handed me off to somebody else. So being good to people, being nice to people, not degrading people. I could have easily said, "What are you doing calling me, man? You got nothing. You live with your parents. F off." I could have done that, but I wouldn't have gotten that deal.
Right.
So
right. Well, guys, we do have to get out of here. I've got some messes to go help my sister clean up. Her roof caved in, her ceiling caved in on her yesterday. So,
oh geez,
yeah.
Are they related to your? Because you had your roof, didn't you? When y'all first moved in, something happened.
No. Hurricane Burl ripped the roof off, but it didn't affect our condo at all.
Oh, okay. I remember something happened with the roof. Yeah. I thought it was a disease and you were rubbing off or something.
I was rubbing off a disease on my sister.
Off, yeah.
We don't live in Arkansas, dude.
But
we don't live in Arkansas.
That's baby. A good place to end before we get too dirty.
All right, y'all. Y'all have a blessed day. Like,
share, comment, subscribe, share, follow, call us, stalk us. I would love to have a stalker. I've always wanted one.
Our number's on the screen every single day. You don't want a stalker. I've had one. All right.
Well, I'll take the stalker if we get a show stalker.
Yeah. Please stalk him, not me. All right, y'all. Y'all have a blessed day. We will see y'all next week for episode number 4.